Hey everyone, in this video we'll look at how to add animations to our character. So your character movement will look like this once you add animations. So let's look at how to do this. So to play the animations on our character, we have to create an animator controller. So let's go ahead and create that. So in the assets folder, I'll create a new folder called game. Alright, so this is where I like to put all my prefabs and scriptable objects and animator controllers. Basically, all the things that a designer would want to use. So inside this folder, I'll create another folder called animator, and I'll create my animator controller over here. So in create, you can see animator controller. So I'll name this character controller. Okay. So now we can double click on it to open the animator controller. So animator controller controls what animation should be played on our game object. So we can drag all our animations in here and then define what animation should be played based on the parameters. So let me drag one of our animations in here. So I'll just drag the run animation. So let me rename this to run. So the first animation that you drag into the animator controller will be the default animation that will be played. So if I also drag the other animations, you can see that their color is different. Only the run animation is in orange color, right? So that's because this is the default animation. So now if we attach our animator controller to our character, then our character should play the run animation by default. So to attach an animator controller to a game object, we have a component called animator. All right. And in this component, we can specify which animator controller that we want to use. So I'll assign the animator controller that we created. And then we also need to assign the avatar of the character. So the avatar of this character is called Erica Archer avatar. So let me assign that. So now when we run the game, our player should play the running animation. All right. So you can see that it's working fine. So now let's also try attaching our animator controller to the second character just to make sure that the animation is also working properly on the second character. So on the whiteboard character, it already has an animator component attached to it. So Unity does this automatically when you turn a character into a humanoid character. And also over here, you can see that the avatar has automatically been assigned. Okay, so we just have to assign the animator controller, and the whiteboard character should also play the running animation. All right, so it's also playing the animation. So our animations are working fine on all the characters. So next, we don't want our character to simply play the running animation. We want to play different animations based on the speed in which the character is moving, right? So if the character is not moving, then we want to play the idle animation. And then if the character is moving slowly, then we want to play the walk animation. And then if the character is moving fast, then we can play the run animation. All right. So the animator controller, there are different ways to control what animation should be played. But in the case of movement animations, I want the animations to blend smoothly. So for example, instead of just switching from the walk animation to the run animation, I want to blend between them based on the speed. So to achieve that, I'm going to use a blend tree. So let me go ahead and delete these three animations. All right. And now I'll create a blend tree to blend between our animations. All right. So I'll name this blend tree locomotion. And then we can double click on the blend tree to open it. So here in the blend tree, we can add multiple animations, and the blend tree will blend between these animations based on the value of this parameter. All right. So in our case, we want to add 3 animations. So here I'll add 3 motion fields. Okay. So to the first one, I'll assign the idle animation. And by the way, we can't directly drag and drop the XPX file of the animation here. We can only assign the animation clip to it. All right, so we have to assign this animation clip. So to the first field, we have to assign the idle animation, and then to the second field, we have to assign the walk animation. All right, and finally, to the third field, we'll assign the run animation. Okay, so now in the preview window, if you play the animation, then the character will be in the idle animation. But now if you change the blend, then it will slowly start walking, and at 0.5 it'll play the walking animation in the actual speed of that animation, right? So that's because here we have thresholds. So the threshold of idle is 0, walking is 0.5, and running is 1. All right. So when it's at 0, it'll be in the idle animation. When it's at 0.5, it'll be playing the walking animation, and when it's 1, it'll be playing the running animation. All right. But the cool thing here is when the blend is between 0.5 and 1, it'll play a fast walking animation like this. So this is a blend between our walking and running animation. So this is why the blend tree is really useful. And also if I try setting the blend somewhere between 0 and 0.5, then it'll also blend between the idle and the walk animation. All right, you can see the character is doing a really slow walk, which is not really useful for us, but I just want to show you how the animations blend. The blending between the walk and the run animation, that is really useful. And by the way, you can also change the threshold of different animations. So right now it's not editable because the automate threshold checkbox is turned on. So if you turn it off, then you can edit the threshold values. So I'll just set the threshold value of the walking animation to something lower, like 0.2. The reason is because I want my character to start playing the walking animation as soon as it starts moving. So this is just a personal preference. You can play with this value and set it to one that you like based on how you want your third person controller. All right. So now we just have to set this blend parameter from the code, and the character should automatically play the correct animation. All right. But first, let me actually rename this blend parameter to something meaningful. So I'll call this move amount. So that makes sense, right? If the move amount is 0, then the character should be playing the idle animation. Then as we increase it, the character should start walking and running, right? So now let's go ahead and set this parameter based on the character's movement. So let me open the player controller script. Okay. So to set a parameter to the animator, first we need to get a reference to it. So I'll cache a reference to the animator from the awake function. I'll just use the getComponent function to get the reference of the animator. So now we should set the move amount parameter in the animator. So we are already calculating a value called move amount over here. So we can set the same value to the animator. So to set a value to the animator, we can call animator dot set. So when you type set, you can see that we have lots of options. So in this case, the move amount parameter is actually a float value, right? So here we have different types of parameter. Move amount is actually float. You can see that its value is floating point. So to set the move amount from code, we can use a set float function. So in the first parameter, we should provide the name of the parameter that we want to set. So in this case, the name of the parameter is move amount. And then in the second parameter, we should pass the value that we want to set. So in our case, we are already calculating the value over here. So let me just pass that as the second parameter. Okay. And by the way, one thing I want to address is the move amount parameter should be between 0 and 1, right? But here, the value that we are calculating, it can be greater than 1. For example, if both horizontal and vertical input is 1, then its value will be 2, right? So we have to make sure to clamp this value between 0 and 1 to make sure that the animations are selected correctly. All right. So to clamp a value between 0 and 1, we have this function called clamp 0, 1. All right. We just have to put the value in this function like this. Okay. So now our character should play the animation correctly based on our movement. So let's go to Unity and test that. And by the way, let me get rid of the wipeout character. I just brought it in just to show you that the animations will work on multiple models. All right, so let's go ahead and test. So now when we move, you can see that our character is playing the animation correctly. All right. Our third person controller is looking so much better when we added the animations. But if you look at how the animation stops, it's stopping really fast, right? It doesn't look very realistic. So the reason for that is because when we stop pressing the input, the move amount becomes 0 immediately. And when the move amount is 0, the character will start playing the idle animation immediately. So we can easily make this smoother by adding a damping when setting the move amount. So if you look at the third parameter of this function, you can see that we have a parameter called damp time. So if we add this parameter, then the animator will smoothly change the parameter to this value instead of setting it instantly. All right. So for the damp time, I'll pass a small value like 0.2. And then when we pass the damp time, then we should also pass the delta time in the fourth parameter. So I'll pass time.delta time in the fourth parameter. Okay. So this should smooth out the animations for us. So let's go to Unity and test. All right. So now you can see that the animation is not stopping instantly. It's slowly coming to a stop, right? So yeah, now we have a pretty decent third person controller. A small problem that we have here is the camera is going below the ground. So let's fix that by reducing the minimum vertical angle of the camera. Okay, let me try setting it to -10. All right, so now the camera won't go beyond this point. Okay, so yeah, our third person controller is looking pretty good. So there is one thing I missed to do while setting up the animations. So if you look at the idle animation, you can see that it is 8 seconds long and has 250 frames. So that's a bit long, and we don't want the idle animation to be that long. If you look at other animations like run and walk, you can see that they are much shorter. So having such a long animation can cause problems for us in the future when we transition to other animations. So we can make this shorter by reducing the end frame. We can just drag the slider to reduce the end frame. So I'll just make the end frame 30. All right. So now the animation is only 1 second long. So let's apply the change and let's just test to make sure that everything is working fine. All right. So things are working just like before. So I'll stop the video here, and in the next video, we'll look at how to set up collision and gravity for our character.